great story. Probably absolutely one of the first customers I ever started banking. He came to me. His request was an extremely small business loan. It really wasn't, anything larger than a car loan. But it has grown over the 8 years that I've been here. He has thoroughly succeeded and has become one of the best customers of the bank. He's loyal. He refers business to me every day, every chance that he gets. And that's cool.
And we'll turn it over to the city manager to go through our agenda. Please. Something's
Bad battery.
bad operator or battery's good.
When they have to rely on the fourth estate.
There we go.
You got it?
Well, as soon as you said that, it came out.
Every electronic in the room is playing live. Okay, Mayor. Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the last Tuesday's meeting. Item number 2, public hearing on the teen curfew renewal. This begins the action steps that we discussed last Tuesday. What I would suggest under this item, Chief Taylor will make his presentation on the police department's request for the renewal of the juvenile curfew ordinance. At that time, he'll take a seat, be available for questions. You would then open it, and any questions from the audience or at the end from the commission. And then close that item. No action is taken under item number 2.
Don't we make a motion to close that?
You can. Typically for us, the mayor has closed the hearing upon hearing of comments.
So nothing. So mine would be number 3.
So just do the, okay.
All right.
And then item 3 is directly the follow-up to that. That's the first reading of your ordinance re-adopting that curfew. We'll do this all again next week as well, a second public hearing, and then the second reading of the ordinance. Presuming passage at that point, your curfew will be back in place for 3 more years.
I haven't heard any comments about it.
We've not had any comments.
Whether bad or whatever.
They're used to it now.
Okay, we have the Kelly Shaw show coming up next. Hard to say.
He needs a marquee.
I'll say that quickly. Item number 4, this is a rezoning over in the vicinity of Sauncey Road and Tartar Avenue. It's actually, I believe, immediately south of that for a new bank building. Okay.
It is. It's most of the property is for a bank, but there's going to be some undeveloped property that's still going to remain vacant. But currently, the entire piece of property is zoned agricultural district, and the owners want to change from agricultural district to retail district. This is, you've had a few of these come before you now, where we've been changing zonings along that Sauncey corridor. And you probably remember that we've gone through the discussion about, and you can just look at the sketch and see the existing zoning north and south of this tract. You've got 6 PDs, and we've talked about that past practice and how staff now would like to try to focus any future zonings based on our zoning districts rather than doing a PD for every single parcel to make sure that they don't have signs too big or have access issues or anything like that. We really do feel that with the amendments that we've had to our sign ordinance and driveway parking manual and those kinds of things, that we do have adequate development standards in place to where straight zoning, we think, serves the same purpose that the PDs were intended to originally. And again, just doing PD after PD just gets very hard to administrate it. So it's along Sauncey, the predominant land uses, non-residential uses. the request to change for general retail, regardless if it was going to be a bank or what. The general retail zoning is appropriate. And particularly with this tract that already has multifamily development directly to the west. So if anything, this would impact nobody. So planning and zoning commissioners followed that practice and are recommending approval. We sent notices out to everybody within 200 feet, no comments. But planning and zoning commissioners recommended it unanimously.
You don't know what's going to develop on the rest of that land?
Not yet. The southern portion is going to have a bank. The northern portion is going to be a separate tract or something. I heard rumors. But, nothing's definite.
Next item, 7394, specific use permit for the placement of the type A manufactured home. This is south on Tradewind Street, south of Southeast 46. Okay.
This particular zoning change is to accommodate a type A manufactured home, which is that definition of type A was something that has received its certificate between 1976 and today. This particular request is for a specific use permit to place a double-wide manufactured home on about an acre-and-a-half piece of property. I think what's interesting about this particular site is it has more issues going on than that. I just wanted to point out that this is just south of 46. The section that this tract is in is within the city limits. Everything east of this particular property is outside the city limits. And so when we're comparing this site with the existing development, all the existing development is pretty much across the street outside the city limits. And it's a hodgepodge of, there's some commercial, there are site-built homes, there are a lot of manufactured homes. So that's currently what's in the area, and that's kind of what's being compared to. That I just kind of wanted to mention that, going back to our annexation policy not too long ago, that situation has basically been created because of we didn't want to make a donut hole for the Tradewind Airport. The Tradewind Airport's outside of the city limits, and so if we wanted to annex this area, we would create a donut hole basically. So that's kind of what's allowed the area east of this property to develop in that manner. So just kind of wanted to mention that, again, there's an instance where not annexing areas really close to the city limits can create some issues. But we are going to be looking at this section fairly closely as it develops, because right now it really is not developed and it's inside the city limits. This isn't an acre-and-a-half, but as we get requests to start developing this section, we're really going to start looking at providing, number one, making sure the city standards are met, and then also trying to look at, we really don't want to see the hodgepodge type development that's across the street in this section.
Are we allowing that at all with this?
That's what I was
application?
thinking.
And then we've got developers still talking about expanding out there.
Well,
Is this one owner of this whole area, or what's this ownership breakdown?
I think, if I remember right, there's a couple of different ownerships, but what you do is you talk to the developers or the owners and kind of let them know our thought process. But this being an acre-and-a-half and having frontage, you can do that and still not create a lot of issues as long as you just don't because what's happening across the street is you get one development in front, and then they want another one behind that, and then another one behind that, and they start doing all these easements. And you can still do an acre-and-a-half with frontage, with a structure on there, and still have the ability to create a subdivision. This really doesn't have any. The only access this whole section has is from 46th, and trade winds basically. 58 goes south of here, but dead ends. Really, it goes down, and you have to go past the overpass. And
But people are using it a lot more now. There's more traffic on 46.
right.
There's a lot of traffic on 46 because of the housing developments, and when you hit 46, now you see a lot of people hit this intersection. I do. Go down to the trade winds and go across, come back out on 58, and it saves you time waiting for the trains.
Mm-hmm.
Because very commonly you pull up there and one train goes by and another goes by, and you're 15 minutes.
You're still very close to the yard.
You're very close. I just have concerns about what we're doing with our development policy. This one place and create another postage stamp that's got to be overcome later. Is the Leanne, this other area, the purple area, that's in the city?
Yes.
Yes.
And across, just right here, the edge of that green is the part of trade winds that's now in the city.
This green is in the city.
Correct. But I just want to be sure this is. But this again up here is a hodgepodge.
Right.
The Lolani's the purple part?
It's a hodgepodge.
It is. I don't know that
There's junk piles.
it's developed maybe according to what they had originally.
Are we going to create that again down here?
But Mayor, it's also zoned industrial, which means
Sure.
it allows any and every use.
Yeah.
It's wide open north. It's wide open north, and this meets the criteria. This particular lot meets the criteria for our suburban development. And again, as long as they have frontage and they do things according to city standards, it's just when you want to start developing off the frontage and that kind of thing, which I'm sure will happen. That's where you really have to let the property owner know you're not going to. If you're going to start selling off lots and subdividing for development, then you're going to be required to be held to the same standards as any other subdivision. But with this one, I don't really think we're at the point, to start that argument. Yeah.
And I think the area that Kelly pointed out just immediately to the east, that's not new development.
No.
That's been out there
It's old trash.
long
New
time.
trash.
Well,
And if you look on that sketch, if you look down south where you see the Merritt Estates, that's basically what you're going to be looking at probably in this area. That you can still have those developments that front, but it's that development on inward from that where you start acquiring streets and platted lots and those kinds of things.
I agree with you 100%, but let me ask the council here. If somebody's an owner of land and you don't have set policies in place, you really can't, after the fact, begin to say to people, no, you can't do that when you've done it when the other surrounding areas. It doesn't really limit the ability to raise their private property.
It's more difficult. This, remember, is a specific use permit. So that means that you weigh each application on its own. This is not a zone per se. So we have a little. I agree with Kelly. This is not like your rezone. This is still zone ag, and so you're just allowing them to put a mobile home on it. Ag is whereas industrial is your apex of your zoning triangle. It allows every use in the city. Ag is the exact opposite right across the street. It's the most restrictive we have. It's just for ag and farmhouse. And then you either have to get it rezoned or ask for a specific use permit, such as is occurring here.
my only question is how this aligns with our development policy. And I don't have probably enough knowledge at this moment to sort through that.
Well, and what we do in our comprehensive plan, our future land use map, this is still designated as an agricultural area. We do have policies in place, for residential development and agricultural zoning districts, and this meets that. So we do have policies in place. This meets all of our current policies, but it's just one of those things that we as staff want to keep an eye on as we get requests for development, that we guide it one way and not let it go the other way.
There was an awful lot of utility work done in that lot at the corner of 46th and Trade Winds and what would be the southeast or west corner. Tremendous amount of utility work, big ditches, lots of I mean, it was going on for 3 or 4 months. Was that to enhance some of the utilities and other things that we have to do to supply services, or the public utilities do private?
I'm really not aware of that work.
Well, you know, that's odd to me, because when I asked that question a couple months ago, seeing all that out there, nobody knew what it was.
There was
Now
a
we've
very
got
large,
somebody.
very large fiber optic installation that went on out there.
It was huge. And there were ditches
We
and
can
trucks.
check when we take a break as to what the city utilities are. There are already 2 major lines, water lines, for the city that are in 46. One's bigger than the other, but those have been there a while.
I've kind of got the same questions as Dr. Eads does, Commissioner Eads. My concern is that we don't want to hurt this guy's property rights, but we also have property rights of the people around here. And obviously, since there's no development, and a notice was sent out, but my question would be, are we affecting the other areas by allowing this and restraining what other owners can do in that area too then, and their ability to develop something? If you think back a few years ago about what trade winds was, now where there's 1,500 houses, nobody would give that a hoot and holler a chance. Nobody did, and yet when somebody went in and did that, because it was a clear area, he was able to do that and do it pretty darn successfully. So my only concern is, are we precluding something like that by allowing this, not thinking comprehensively about what the full development is and how it affects other owners? And this person too has a right. So I don't know. I don't know if I have enough information to decide.
There's no limit to the length of the specific use permit. So how then practically is it really different than something?
Because it's a single tract is the major difference rather than area.
Say if somebody came along and wanted to do 5 more manufactured homes along there, they would all have to get specific use permits. And in my mind, what's a specific use permit is based off on the criteria that you're looking at for that particular piece of property at that particular time. Just because you approve this one doesn't mean that you have to approve another one or something else. It's based on its own merits.
To do that.
To do any more.
Yeah. Kelly, with this tract of land that he has, his trailer will only take up 1 little space in that whole tract. He doesn't have to come back for another permit to line that sucker up with trailers, does he? Or manufactured homes.
He's getting 1.
Does he own?
Is he allowed 1 manufactured home?
Is this the limit of his
So he would
line?
have to come back.
1 permit.
But there's
Well,
one
for
for
the property
probably
owner, yes.
This is all that property owner owns. Well, how many property owners around here are we maybe affecting negatively by allowing this one? Is it 1 property owner that plans development, or is it 50 property owners?
There's 1 major property owner in this section, and he's the one that sold this to the guy. This actually was one of those that it was already done.
How long ago did he sell it?
About a year and a half ago.
And you all raise excellent points. And going back kind of to the annexation with the cutout that goes around trade winds, what you're being asked to do here could occur immediately on the east side of the street and has occurred with no visit.
We have no say.
No visit.
In a sense, a specific use permit allows you to do what actually is prohibited by another rule of law, which says thou shalt not spot zone. But a specific use permit, almost like your PD, it gives you some flexibility in a certain circumstance to say, we're going to do something that's a little bit different here. It doesn't quite fit squarely with our zoning ordinance, so we're going to do a planned development. Here, when you just look at what you have before you, you have an entire section of land, and it's how much? 1.5 acres out of 640, and he wants to put a mobile home there.
That's not a 640.
No, it's short. It's short.
It's short because of the railroad.
You get the point there.
You get the point.
Point measure.
It's a large section of land. You're talking about 1.5 acres. I would commend to you the same 2 questions that the Planning and Zoning Commission considered, stated there at the bottom of the cover memorandum. 1, would this type of dwelling unit negatively affect surrounding property values? Well, I'm not a real estate appraiser, but you can examine the properties across the street. And to some extent, it's outside the city limits, and it's up to your conscience whether you want to consider that or not. The second question before the P&Z, does this type of dwelling unit fit in with the overall character of the surrounding neighborhood? It's open pasture land on one side and mishmash of other structures across the street. Those are two good kind of questions to help guide your discretion, but you may answer yes or no to either one.
The applicant was required to submit a market analysis prepared by a licensed real estate appraiser on the answer to number 1 and 2, and his opinion was no, it would not, and yes, it does.
My questions wouldn't come up if we were tracking along the way we were several years ago. The fluxes in annexation policies and the talk about the comprehensive plan to talk to these things. I'm not sure I'm ready to make a decision about something like this at all. I mean, personally, I just...
If we put it off, it's my motion. If we put it off a week, what other information would we like to
Well,
get?
is it possible, is it proper for us to go talk to this person and other people that are owners around here? Is that a proper thing?
One owner.
You have one owner that surrounds this property. We sent out. I don't have the file with me, but I can let you know how many property owners got notice. But
I've been systematically going through the developers, touring with them, and talking to them, and trying to see what their dreams are. Because if we're going to grow 35,000 people, we're going to grow 8,000 homes, and we're going to grow 680 a month or a year. We've got to have a plan that works this. And as they look at their dreams, I don't know what all will be fulfilled, but I've talked to 4 of them so far, spent a lot of time with them, trying to discern what it is, and I think other commissioners may have independently. My concern is that we're precluding something without enough knowledge. Now, whether it's proper for us to get that knowledge, I understand Dr. Reed's concern about that property owner's rights, but I've got a concern about, are we being consistent in the efforts we're making to change things and develop things? I don't know.
I have that concern too, but this man already owns that property, and he is wanting to put a manufactured home. And you know how I feel about manufactured homes. I don't like them, but they do exist, and that's all some people can afford and can deal with. But I'm sort of like you. I'd like to know exactly where we are and how we're going to go forward, because we are sort of setting a precedent that the property owner could sell another lot or 2, and then we'd have a few more, maybe just buildings to store stuff in or something. And so I'm really concerned about that. But I mean, this gentleman has the right to buy property and build a home too.
Well, it looks like we sent out notices to. It looks like by far the majority owner was the one who sold him this property. It looks like we sent out notices to two smaller property owners on this side of the street.
On the east side.
On the east side, or on the west side.
Are we required to send them out to people that aren't in the city limits?
No.
So the other side didn't get it.
Oh.
State law says that you use the city tax rolls for sending out your notices.
And then did the other major property owner get a notice? There's no, we don't know if it was acknowledged.
Yeah, he got a notice.
But we don't know. It doesn't get sent registered, so we don't know if it's in a stack of mail or anything. That's fine. We're talking about PO boxes.
But I could tell you something. I mean, and I agree with what Jared said. I mean, they're great questions, and as a matter of fact, it's nice to hear those kind of questions. But I really think that what you do is you deal with the current issue at hand, but you also have to keep an eye on, because, like I said, we do have policies in place, and they're not bad policies for this type of development, and it does meet those policies. We require at least 100-foot of frontage on an arterial, because we don't want to start subdividing that up and have entryway after entryway. So you have a large amount of frontage, and you have a certain size lot density that requires it that makes it subject to suburban type development. So it meets our current policies for development in agricultural type rural areas. I think from planning's point of view, what you do is you try to make sure that, number one, that's met, but number two, as things start developing, that you really keep your eye on the ball, and that you don't let things start happening to where at some point in time, then you're stuck with no way to get inward on the section, and then you have to start figuring out how you're going to handle that. But, if we start seeing lots subdivide, and a lot of that comes through communications. I mean, you talk with the major property owner out there. Look, if you want to start subdividing and selling off property, we're not going to start doing it on a 7, 8, 9 piecemeal deal. If you're really going to start subdividing for development, this is what you're going to do. But you do that through communication and just keeping your eye on what's going on out here.
This is an acre and a half, the whole shaded area.
This particular lot is. It's similar also to look at the house that was just recently demolished for the apartment complex on Coulter, or that there was a house off of Hillside that just if the pressure is there and the marketability and the market wants to, things are going to develop, and this property owner will take his money and run, and you'll have one loss.
But why then did we look at, it doesn't answer in my mind why we looked at maps that showed expansion and thought about giving the reserve areas and doing the other things that we're projecting forward. I simply don't have enough information to make a decision at this point.
May I suggest, Mary, it's 2013 and you see how this area's developed. Nothing's happened here. There's no guarantee there'll be any future development anytime soon, or it may explode tomorrow. If you have real concerns about this section, then you might consider visiting the city manager and the planning department and have them bring back a rezoning scheme for this section. And go ahead and, if you really want to restrict and control what's going to happen here, then use your zoning power and zone commercial along the arterial roads, zone transitional phrases, zone residential areas, and now it's locked. Now you won't have a mishmash. It's been zoned. And when they come in, they're going to have to either follow a new zoning case, apply, or their plat land design follows land use. That if it's going to be a commercial plot, then it'll be planted that way. But use your zoning power. If you're that concerned with this section, it is a pristine piece of land, then maybe this is one to consider a new approach, and the city affirmatively seek to start zoning, and you prima facie decide what area will be residential, what area will be business, what area will be commercial, and now you don't have to worry about it.
Well, it speaks to not having to do PDs everywhere either.
Yes, sir.
And where do we stand for state law comes in on manufactured homes?
Well, we have to allow them in our city, and this specific use permit is what allows those in our city. We have to. I was going to ask the question a while ago, but I thought it might be antagonistic. I certainly don't mean it that way. But if not here, where should Mr. Ojeda buy his acre and a half for his trailer?
Comes down to property, right?
Where does he go?
I think I'd be able to have a better view of this one way or the other by next week, but I don't know.
But if we zoned it, as you're suggesting, then residential would not be allowed where he wants to put his trailer. Right?
Well, it depends on what you do.
Yeah.
The city can initiate. Number one, the city can initiate zoning. You have the ability to do that. And if you're concerned about how this might develop with manufactured homes or whatever, you could zone it per our comprehensive plan suggestion for sections where you have the neighborhood unit concept as much as could be accomplished in this section with non-residential uses on the hard corners and residential uses inward, and you could zone it GR on the corners, and you could zone it residential 1, 2, or 3. You could do that.
You might suggest, and I think having proactive zoning of what traditionally we've let an agricultural zone hold is sure something to look into. This is a unique area over there because you do have some very heavy industry up on what would be the northwest corner of that tract and the train tracks. And we've all had a lot of comment lately about neighborhoods that are built up against the train tracks.
Well, of course, I think some people live with that, some don't. It's not different than when Mr. Sinclair was talking to us about getting those units and working with those. Yet he specifically wants it to be surrounded by what I would call some pretty industrial uses. The other thing that I'm considering here is it's commercial. Yeah, it'll be commercial. The agricultural deal is sort of a holding pattern, as I see it. That's my definition. A holding pattern to get a zoning. So I don't know that we really are saying, well, it's okay to do anything there. We didn't have made a decision. And I think we're now trying to figure out how to decide these things so that we plan. I just think I'm unable to make a decision at this point. I don't know whether it means I abstain or vote no to put it off for another week, because I can sure have an answer by next week that would satisfy my concern.
I think we are able to get to time certain.
I don't know that I'm for or against it right now.
Well, then the thing about it is we all know what happens. You'll get one of these, and then you'll get another one, and then you'll have a third. And then anybody else who's interested in this area will say, well, I can't go there. They'll write off this whole area. And that's what we've got, and that's what happens consistently.
My main concern is piecemealing it instead of
I
zoning.
agree. That's been our effort, and we're making a shift. It's turning the boat. It's not simple. And I don't want to hurt anybody here that has property rights on either side.
Would I need to make a move to delay it or to table it?
Is it time certain that you do for next week?
That doesn't leave us any problems. There's no like statute of limitations on the decision.
The notices have run, so we're good with that. That works. Mayor, do you want to?
Mayor?
Do you want to suggest 2 weeks rather than next week?
That'd be great.
Okay, I'll say, I'll
2 weeks.
I'll move to table it for 2 weeks.
Would be March the something there in
March 4.
Would you be an evening meeting too, and then maybe,
it would be March 5.
March 5.
Okay.
Well,
March 5.
I think those are fantastic comments, and I really appreciate you taking the time to think about it. But I'll just mention one last thing that, if that's the way we want to start trending towards, I think that's fantastic. But I just would mention one other thing. If you start, because we have some areas that are in holding patterns with this type of zoning and everything. And so if you want to start trending towards residential type development, zoning, and that kind of thing, then, property owner may say, well, okay, like in this instance, there's water there, but there's no sewer there. So if we want to start zoning things for residential development and those types of development, then the city needs to be willing to have the infrastructure available that supports that kind of development.
Sure. But I think that's part. I do think we'll get to a decision. I don't think it'll be that long. But I just, all we talked about is keeping land where we have the ability to do it.
Now, we as city commission or the property owner still owns the property. I mean, they're going to do whatever they want to.
Well, they can.
I mean, within the confines of whatever we design.
And that's what I think will answer. I'm glad we're giving some thought to it.
Excellent discussion. We are as well. Okay, so we'll look to table till March 5 on ordinance 7394. Item number 6, ordinance 7395. This is a rezoning out kind of in the creek or canyon area of Westcliff. So, Mr. Shaw.
I think this is an interesting case to start from the beginning. This area, this entire area, is part of Westcliff Park, which was developed many years ago. This particular area was designated in that plan development as public open space and a lake, a pond.
Way back.
Yeah, way in the original development plans. Since that time, the property that was owned by the developer was then sold. There's no homeowners association out there that maintains this area still, as has occurred with a lot of the areas out there that were designated as common areas and that kind of thing. So through the years, this property has been sold. It's not being maintained as a public common area or open space. Basically what it is just there's a natural drainage way that goes through here and hooks up with another drainage area that goes on the east side of those apartments, and then they come together and go on down into north towards La Paloma. So probably by far the majority of this area is a natural drainage area. It's got a blanket drainage easement over probably 90-85% of the area, and this is about a 28-acre area. What the property owner wants to do, and again, this area's been sold, and it was first developed with some residential uses immediately to the west. Then that property owner sold this 28-acre parcel off to the applicant, and it really is kind of a transitional area if you look at it between the residential part of West Cliff and then what's developed as the non-residential development at the corner of Tascosa Road and Amarillo Boulevard. So it's really kind of a transitional area there, and then you have the Stanley Marsh property that's kind of to the northeast of here. What the applicant was wanting to do is actually build a house and have a little retirement area out there. He wanted to have a few animals on the property to help graze and keep the weeds and grass down, because with the topography out there, you can't put any kind of a commercial mower or anything out there. So he really wanted a residential use, but with the ability to have some animals out there. With it being designated in the plan development as open space, we suggested a rezoning, which at first was going to be agriculture, which would allow him to have a residence and have animals. The property owners that are immediately to the west, there's some attached townhomes and then some garden homes. They don't have a problem, obviously, with the single-family residents, but they did have a problem with other things, and they really didn't have any problem with the animals. But they had problems with other uses that were allowed in agricultural zoning, which you could have a kennel, there are other uses that you could have. And they were concerned about that, and they had a big concern about what could he do to affect the drainage that is behind the property. I had a couple of discussions with the residents. I had discussions with the applicant. The applicant had no plans to have any kennels or commercial feedlots or anything like that. He just simply wanted a few animals out there to help keep the weeds and grass down, and to have a little retirement area. Frankly, this property is not going to be used for anything because of the topography and the drainage easement. So, talking to both parties, we tabled it from the P&Z. We decided that this might be a good area for planned development because it is in that transitional area. It's got some topography issues. It's got residences directly adjacent to the west. So we thought that a planned development that would allow single-family uses, single-family detached uses with the ability to have, and if you look at the development standards, it really, planned development would allow single-family detached residential uses and pasture land uses, which is defined as the grazing of horses and or cattle only, no llamas, no goats, nothing like that, and limited to not to exceed one animal per acre. That made everybody happy. The residents just didn't want kennels and everything else down there, or goats. The property owner just wanted to be able to have some animals out there. Probably the bigger deal was what was going on with the drainage. Planning staff and engineering staff went out and walked the entire property. We walked the property with the residential owners. We walked the property with the applicant. And the applicant is very aware of what he can and cannot do as far as changing the natural drainage ways or anything like that. He's actually being required by TCEQ to build a silt pond and do other things. But as far as how it impacts the residences, he's very clear on what he can and can't do. And actually, truth be known, he's trying to help those homeowners out because they've got a problem their homes are built up on a pad, and then they've got about a 15-foot drop right at about 5 feet past their back wall. And there's already some erosion problems. And he has agreed, well, they're in discussions right now he wants to sell back about a 35-foot strip behind that earth retaining wall, so that they would have the ability to try to shore up the pads that they're built on. And if he can help in any way with routing drainage somewhere else, he's more than willing to do so. So they're actually trying to work together out there, not only on this, but on, I think, more important issues. This particular request would really just allow the property to be owned and used with a house and some animals. The property owners were okay with it. He's okay with it, and planning and zoning commissioners felt that since both sides got together and worked something out that they were both happy with, that they were fine with it.
It's just one house, or is it a community of houses?
One.
It's a ranch.
He probably only has the room to build one.
Somebody said the city owns some of that area, or was gifted that to develop as walking trails that had to tie back in.
No, that actually was part and parcel of the actual development, and was
Never.
what's still in most of what I think you might be referring to as you come around the creek from that is still in the ownership of what's now the homeowners association.
Okay.
And has been a contentious matter since the original intentions of West Cliff came unraveled 25 years ago.
Yeah. We've approached the city a few times and declined in the past.
There are several areas out there that they would like the city to.
Yeah.
If there were to be lakes, what you're looking at falls very hard left to right, right to left into a V, and then it turns and kind of goes up in a pretty good sized draw toward the northwest and comes out on Fairway where you have those major concrete culvert crossings. There were to be lakes back in there, all kind of stuff in the original McCulloch development that never occurred. And most of what you see is alleys in West Cliff are not alleys. If you look at the plat, they're bridle paths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Area 18 is there's some nonprofits involved there. They didn't respond to this at all.
Area 18.
Down there, right below it.
Are they that
It's a
far?
neighbor.
Are they that far down there?
South.
South, I can't say.
Oh, there's two 18s. I apologize.
South and north.
You're talking about the ones to the south.
Oh, to the south.
Nope.
Yeah, no, nobody's had any, we haven't received any negative comments other than the property owners who are concerned about what he's moving some dirt around, and he's using some concrete ties to shore up some erosion, some problem areas that have some erosion issues out there. But everything that he's doing has been, number one, he was required to produce a drainage study on what he's planning on doing. He submitted that. It's been reviewed by the engineering department. He's had TCEQ out there. Everything that he's doing out there is according to standards, both state and local. And there was one issue where Blossom Way continues on. That's going to be his main drive into his property. And he was up there trying to, he's going to have to build that up a lot for it to come on down into his property. And he was doing some excavating right around where that road ends, and they were very concerned that that would start eroding into the road that we have now. And so was the engineering department. So they've talked about that, and like I said, he's very clear on what he can and can't do.
This is a fairly current program.
It would be, it's 1 year old.
No.
It's 1 year. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. You're saying that you have all these empty lots here on this end of this development. What is it? They're all full now?
They're all full.
With maybe two that are empty.
I'm about all these empty lots right here.
That filled up very quickly.
Did it really?
No, on that, right there.
Okay.
Up where it says 32, 33.
I thought maybe that was what we called in the business a sign.
Yep, they have filled up. In fact, that one that you can see on number 8 was recently completed. It's a pretty large home.
Yeah.
And someday, if y'all would like and have time, outside the meeting, we'll be glad to pull up the plats from a bigger bird's eye view of this. Had West Cliff ended up the way it was originally designed, it would have been your first ever master planned community in Amarillo. There was a school site back in the middle of this canyon. Remember
On
that?
top of the hill.
Yes, sir.
We had a fire station area.
Down here.
The fire station was down by 42. That was the cities. So yeah, it's there's quite a history to this neighborhood.
And the animals include no chickens. You just need to make that.
Don't start that chicken discussion.
Horses and what?
No chickens.
Well, what if they're a pet?
I had a lady who's told us that she came up to the door every day and woke her up.
Yeah.
That's what she told me.
Grazing
She came
animals.
up-
is all you can have.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
What you're rubbing.
Grazing animals only, 4-footed.
Chickens graze.
Yeah.
Any questions on ordinance 7395 that we might try to answer?
No, he'll become a new taxpayer when it always happens.
Bottom line, you get some tax off.
That's right. Which is generating nothing.
And everybody else is happy.
Any more?
Okay.
Let's look at item number 7.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, sir.
How many more of these do we have to record?
As many as I can bring.
That's good.
Trying to keep your P&Z active. Item number 7, resolution on synthetic drugs. Ms. Louisa Matthews and her group of Impact Futures came and approached you several weeks ago. Of course, the problems, I think, with what's variously called synthetic marijuana, K2, spice, et al. Pretty well known. No doubt that this is a horrendous problem. Of course, the real issue then becomes how do one effectively deal with it. There are now 3 bills in the Texas legislature. Senate Bills 263 and 264, as well as House Bill 124, specifically to address this. Marcus, I think, has done an excellent job of taking some of the materials provided by Ms. Matthews and her group and crafting that rather than an ordinance, which we do feel would have very difficult time being enforced. Crafting that into a resolution very strongly calling upon not only the state legislature, but the United States Congress to address this issue and to do so in a comprehensive manner. Ms. Matthews and several of her board members will be here today. They have recently returned from Washington, D.C. I think they are doing their dead level best, to try to impress the seriousness of this problem upon everybody. We did provide her with a copy of the draft. She and her board have reviewed it. They were in agreement with the draft, and I expect them to be here today.
I think, Mayor, we need to make a special point, and I do think this is really well written, that the public is not going to necessarily understand the difference between an ordinance and a resolution. If this isn't presented in the paper just right, people are going to get the impression that this is what we passed in an ordinance.
Well, I think we want to make note of things like, because Dr. Eads, what you said was, I understand now, very justified, because Locust already said they're back on the streets with new drugs after they enacted an ordinance. So you said within 24 hours, and that's pretty close, they were back on the street selling drugs, but they changed one chemical. I don't understand that totally, but they're back. So we want something effective, and if you'd like to comment on that, I'd encourage you.
Sure.
It's your important point.
You're our resident drug guy.
I'd like you to maybe educate, because I think it's